Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. The hockey community is in mourning. 3 junior hockey players died yesterday after a crash in Alberta. 2 of them were from Kamloops. We'll bring you more on that up first. And the Premier has just spoken to businesses in Surrey this morning about the extortion crisis. He's now forming a community advisory group. We're asking, what is the impact on business and the community? And with all the ideas and promises being kicked around, what does need to be implemented right now? At 12:45, we'll celebrate Black History Month. I'm Michelle Elliott. Welcome to BC Today. Reaction is coming in from across the country to a tragedy in the hockey community. 3 junior players on the Southern Alberta Mustangs team died after a crash in Alberta yesterday. 2 of the players were from Kamloops. Prime Minister Mark Carney shared his condolences.
It's a tragedy. It's the nightmare of every parent, every teammate, family, friends, and my heart goes out to obviously to the families of the victims and the team.
That's Prime Minister Mark Carney. Shelley Joyce joins me now. She's a host of CBC's Daybreak Kamloops. Shelley, thank you for being here. What more can you tell us about what happened?
Well, Michelle, it's such a tragedy for, as you mentioned, this hockey town of Kamloops. Everybody here is in some way involved in hockey, and it's a really tight-knit community. So there's a lot of grieving happening today. Cameron Cazorso was a goalie, and left winger JJ Wright was a left winger, both 18 years of age, and both from Kamloops. They were pursuing their love of hockey by extending their opportunity to play when they aged out of Kamloops minor hockey by joining the Southern Alberta Mustangs. Yesterday morning, when this accident happened, they were traveling with another teammate, a young player, 17 years of age, named Caden Fine from Alabama. So the boys were together. They were on their way to a hockey practice in Staveley, Alberta, which is where they were practicing and where the team was located. They were involved in a terrible collision with a gravel truck.
Wow, it really is a tragedy. Shelley, what more have we been able to learn about these 2 boys in particular being from Kamloops?
Well, it's become quite difficult, actually, Michelle, to talk to people because, as you know, people were hit so suddenly with this tragedy that they're just kind of simmering in their grief. But a lot of parents have reached out to me, and their kids have reached out because they just want people to know how great these boys were. So they both loved hockey so much. I'm hearing that a lot. They're extremely passionate about it. They were very inclusive kids, so when it came to playing hockey, they made sure that everybody was involved, everybody felt welcome, and in other activities as well. I heard from someone who told me that Cameron's whole family, when he played soccer, would show up. So aunts and uncles and grandparents, the whole gang would show up whenever he would play. And JJ, just a complete joker, super feisty on the ice, the nicest guy in the world in the locker room, just very, very highly regarded by both players and their parents.
They're close to my son's age, a couple years older, but my son did know them and tried out with them and whatnot. I do know the names. I know them as, around the arenas and whatnot. So it's, you get to know the kids pretty good after doing it for a long time, coaching and being on the board. But yeah, it's a sad day today. Both of them played here for, JJ was here from 2011 to 2025. And the year he aged out last year, he was playing U18 Tier 4, which, that team was very close. I know that. Cameron, 2012, I believe, to 2025. Even with the 2 boys that played here, there's a 3rd boy that was from Alabama, and we can't forget him as well, right? So, and then the Mustang players are, I'm sure they're, can't even imagine what they're going through right now. So,
yeah, That's Nate Bosa, president of the Kamloops Minor Hockey Association. You can hear just how choked up he is there. He suggested people in Kamloops put out a hockey stick or two in memory of these young boys on their front porch for tonight, and just feels like at least that will give the kids some sense of solace.
Yeah, and as you said, it's difficult for so many to even process this and talk about it. For the team, have they been commenting to media at all? What have they been able to say?
Well, they have. They did send out a statement, and they did, by the way, also ask for privacy for friends and families of these young men because they are just experiencing such an incredible level of grief. But I'll just read you a little bit of the official statement from the Southern Alberta Mustangs. It is with unimaginable heartbreak that we confirm 3 players from the Southern Alberta Mustangs were killed in a motor vehicle accident earlier today while traveling to team practice. So this came out yesterday. There are no words that can adequately express the depth of our grief. These young men were more than hockey players. They were teammates, sons, brothers, friends, deeply loved members of our Mustangs family and the communities we call home. Our hearts are with the families, friends, billet families, teammates, coaches, and everyone who loved them. We ask that their families be given privacy and compassion as they navigate this devastating loss. And that's just part of a statement that was submitted by the Southern Alberta Mustangs.
Well, certainly our thoughts are with the community in Kamloops and the hockey community overall. Shelley, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Michelle.
That's Shelley Joyce. She's the host of Daybreak Kamloops in Kamloops. It is now 12:12. You're with BC Today. In other news now, Premier David Eby met with business leaders in Surrey today to address the ongoing extortion crisis. The Surrey Police Service say so far in 2026, there have been 46 cases of extortion, of them 11 shootings, 1 arson, and there have been 29 victims. Now, Eby compared the extortion crisis to a, quote, slow motion terror attack.
People are afraid to leave their homes. They're afraid to attend their businesses. They're afraid to do business. They're afraid to celebrate when they have big accomplishments that may draw attention. I heard stories of developers who are reluctant to share information about buying properties for future developments. I heard about realtors who are unwilling to be recognized as sales leaders of local businesses that don't want to advertise. Obviously, this is paralyzing to commerce south of the Fraser. I also heard stories about families who call in extortion threats who are not being met with a consistent response.
Now, Eby has just returned from Ottawa and says the province is working with the federal government to try and get more resources. And this morning, he did announce that he's appointing a community advisory group in which community members who will be selected will work with police to ensure that police understand what victims and others are experiencing. So we're asking you, what is the impact of the extortion crisis on local residents and the business community? And what can be implemented now to stop the string of extortion? You can call us now. Just hit pound 690 on your cell phone or dial 604-669-3733, 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950. You can email bctoday@cbc.ca or leave a comment on our TikTok Live. Joining me to take your calls is Steve Kooner. He's a BC Conservative MLA for Richmond Queensborough and the official opposition critic for the Attorney General. And Steve is with me in studio. Good afternoon.
Thank you for having me, Michelle.
Thank you for being here. You heard what the Premier had to say. How would you describe the impact on the community?
The impact on the community is devastating. And I appreciate the provincial government's line of action now, but it's too little, too late. And, we see this community advisory group that's been struck because the government wants to listen to the community. I appreciate that. The community should be listened to. But the community has been doing a public outcry for a very long time, and they wanted to be listened to. And this crisis has been going on for a long time.
Right. And he talked this morning about inconsistencies when it comes to the messaging from the Surrey Police Service, from the provincial task force. But there are so many players involved, right? You have municipal leaders, the mayor, councillors as well. You have this task force, Surrey Police, the province, as well as the federal government. What's leading to, I guess, how are they not working together more in a more coordinated way?
It comes down to provincial leadership. And, the province needs to do more. And we see that they're constantly being reactive rather than proactive. And when they see a problem, they try to fix the cracks. So what we see today, this announcement, the community's been asking to be listened to for some time, and they're saying that there's some issues. And so this is an aspect of the provincial government not taking appropriate action with that substantially addresses the crisis.
What is the appropriate action? And fair to say you would be critical, of course, of the province, as you are the critic, the BC Conservative MLA, a BC Conservative MLA. But what is the action that you think is needed from the provincial government?
Well, if this provincial government was listening, they'd hear from the community, and they have been asking for more charges. And, there was an ask for dedicated Crown prosecutors. I lately heard the Attorney General mention that there's some form of dedicated Crown prosecutors. If they are actually, in fact, listening, if the provincial government is, in fact, listening to the community, they should be coming out and saying, when did they appoint these dedicated Crown prosecutors? And how many dedicated Crown prosecutors are there just working on extortion alone? And because the community has been also asking for transparency. And, when you have transparency, there's more trust with, certain action items. And then you have more results as well. So I appreciate the government wants to listen at this stage, and that's why they're doing a community advisory group. But they should have been listening all along.
There have been some charges. Yesterday, we heard that there were three young people, young men who were taken into custody, who were arrested and charged afterwards with discharging a firearm in connection to another shooting. And they were apprehended as a result of something called Project Assurance. What can you tell us about that?
Well, it's a welcoming news from the community in terms of when there's arrests happening. And the community would actually like to see the arrests go far in terms of more charges actually happening. And what we're seeing is that you mentioned earlier that there has been 46 incidents of extortion just in this year, starting from January 1st onwards.
Yes.
And what I believe it was in this press conference from the Premier, or it was recent information that there's only been 13 charges. And 13 charges when Surrey's had, say, close to probably about 150 or close to 200 incidents of extortion since this wave really took off. And then there's been incidents in other municipalities as well. And there's been a lot of unreported incidents as well. So when you look at 13 charges, it seems to be a drop in the bucket. And the community is actually seeing a frustration. Yes, it's welcome news whenever there's any efforts to arresting these suspects. But the community wants the action to go further. They want the charges to be laid. And at times we've seen some discussion about how there's been foreign nationals, and we've seen that there's been some refugee claims made when somebody gets arrested. And so there needs to be concrete steps taken by this provincial government. And there seems to be some significant action that's missing, or action has been taken and it hasn't had a real impact.
a couple of things there. Let me just put out the phone numbers again. In light of the Premier today meeting with businesses in Surrey and announcing a community advisory group, and this is to ensure that police understand what victims and families and others in the community are experiencing when it comes to the string of extortion, the extortion crisis in south of the Fraser. So we're asking you, what is the impact of the extortion crisis on residents, on businesses in the community, and what do you think needs to be implemented now to stop the violence? Love to hear from you. 604-669-3733, 604-669-3733, or 1-800-825-5950. Again, 1-800-825-5950. We're watching your emails as well, bctoday@cbc.ca, and your comments, you can leave them on TikTok if you're watching us there. My guest is Steve Kooner, BC Conservative MLA for Richmond Queensborough and the official opposition critic for the Attorney General. So a couple of points that I'd like to just touch on. You mentioned foreign nationals, the presence of foreign nationals here, the three who were arrested. It does seem that they are foreign nationals. What is the role for the federal government for immigration here?
Well, there are hearings involved. And what we have heard in the past is when there were some arrests and there was a significant number of refugee claims made after arrests, we were kind of told in the media that the process for those refugee claims would take approximately 4 years. And so the community is definitely feeling the injury, but the insult is being added to that injury. So the injury being that having to fear these extortion incidents, and the insult being that now these suspects are making refugee claims, and now they're actually benefiting off the public system, off the taxpayers that are actually significantly affected by this extortion crisis.
Now, what about the international student system when it comes to the approval of visas, but also, once visas start to run out, are nearing the end of their term, how precarious is that situation for these students? What makes them vulnerable to being recruited, I guess, is what I'm asking.
That there needs to, I think we need to let law enforcement do their job, and law enforcement has been doing a good job. But there is a failure of provincial leadership in terms of community feeling a little bit left out in terms of what information is available. And I believe the communication, the community needs to be listened to, communication needs to be transparent.
How much of that communication does fall, though, on the municipality and the local police service?
Well, what we're saying is that the municipal government in Surrey in particular has been very vocal and has been listening. And what an interesting point is that recently the municipality has been reaching out directly to the federal government. That is an example of provincial failure, because if, say, the province was addressing this crisis adequately, a municipal government wouldn't have the need to actually go to the federal government, because they would actually be having their needs met by the provincial government.
Okay, and on that note, Mayor Brenda Locke is in Ottawa this week, and she stated to press for additional support to address the national extortion crisis, and she says that will be her priority during her meetings with federal ministers, senior officials, and municipal leaders. This is a meeting among municipal leaders and the federal government that goes beyond what's happening in Surrey right now. But to your point about advocacy on the part of local officials there, let me just take a call here from Jeremy in Victoria. Jeremy, what do you want to say about the impact and what needs to be done now?
Thanks for having me on.
Sure.
Well, my query, if you will, is the gentleman speaking now has a lot of good points, and I do question why the government hasn't been getting involved in this for a while. But I do hear a lot of finger pointing, and I'd like to ask the gentleman what have the Conservative side and their members been doing to tackle this, other than just speaking recently also about it?
Jeremy, thank you for the question. Yes, Steve.
The official opposition has actually been leading on this crisis.
How
and
so?
a lot of the action items that we have spoken about have been adopted by this provincial government after the fact. For example, earlier on, if you see the official opposition press releases back in May, there was an ask to build trust with the community. And subsequently, a month and a half later, this provincial government adopted an awareness campaign. There was an ask for a multilingual phone line to do reporting. A month and a half later, this provincial government adopted a tip line. There was an ask way back in May in those press releases for a more provincial, to have more provincial involvement, have provincial leadership to have a combined effort between the BC RCMP and the local law enforcement. And so at that time, what we were hearing was that the provincial government was saying that, look, there's a RCMP effort from back east that is coordinating police law enforcement right across the country. But then we saw in September, the BC Extortion Task Force was actually, in fact, adopted. So the official opposition has been leading to fight these extortion incidents. And time and time again, this government has been reactive. They've been watching the official opposition, and then they've been adopting certain items. But then by that time, the crisis gets even worse.
I'm going to say thank you to Steve for your call from Victoria. I'm going to put out the numbers again and asking you, what is the impact of the extortion crisis on the community and on businesses as well? The Premier meeting with business leaders in Surrey this morning, and he's announced he's appointed a community advisory group to work with police on the impact of extortion on the community. We're asking you, what is the impact on local residents, on the business community, and what's needed now? 604-669-3733, 604-669-3733. My guest is BC Conservative, the opposition critic for the Attorney General, and MLA for Richmond Queensborough, Steve Kooner. Let's take another call now from Cash in Kamloops. Hi, Cash. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Yeah. What do you want to say about the impact on the community, on businesses, and what needs to be done right now? What should be implemented now?
Yeah, so my question is for the Conservative MLA, who's the opposition critic. So immigration and refugee affairs are dealt with at the federal level, it's my understanding. Mm-hmm. And the Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General, Nina Kreger, put out a statement saying how she was upset that they're allowed to claim refugee status and stuff. So my question is, if the Conservatives were in office, what would they do differently? How would they put more pressure on the government? What would they do differently as opposed to what the minister is doing right now?
Federally, what would you do to lobby the federal government?
So it's one thing, this provincial government talking about certain things, and one thing about putting out letters. This provincial government also needs to have detailed action plans.
But what would the BC Conservatives do to press the federal government?
Well, as I stated earlier, if somebody's making a refugee claim, and the process is taking 4 years for that claim to be dealt with. How come a plan has not been put forward to the federal government to say that it shouldn't be taking 4 years, these hearings should be expedited because we are dealing with an urgent crisis here in British Columbia?
And have you or any BC Conservative representatives reached out to Ottawa then on this point? I understand you're in opposition, but has there been any communication from your party to the federal government?
From the official opposition, I have written letters to the Attorney General of Canada, a couple of letters. And so there has been that. Normally, the official opposition would direct their inquiries to the provincial government. But since we've been seeing inadequate action, the official opposition has had to write to the federal government.
My guest, Steve Kooner, who is the BC Conservative MLA for Richmond-Queensborough, the official opposition critic for the Attorney General. We continue to take your calls on this as we ask you, what is the impact of the extortion crisis on the community and on businesses as well as residents? We heard from David Eby this morning as he met with business leaders in Surrey, talking about a need for not just more consistent messaging from the different police agencies involved, but also a need for police to understand better what the community is going through. And hence, he's appointing a community advisory group. A chair will be assigned announced tomorrow or appointed tomorrow, and community members will be selected who would then work with police. So we're asking you, what is the impact? If you live in the area south of the Fraser, I'd like to hear from you. What is the impact of the extortion crisis, and what needs to be implemented now to stop the violence? A lot of suggestions being put forward. A call for a national emergency, and local municipal leaders as well talking about a need for helicopters and things like that. So we'll ask you what needs to be implemented. More of your calls and more with Steve Kooner coming up after this CBC News update. And here now is Rob Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. Vancouver police say a local doctor is facing charges for allegedly sexually assaulting two teenage patients. Police say the girls were 17 and 14 years old when the alleged assaults started and continued over several years. 54-year-old Herman Hao Man Lee is charged with sexual assault and sexual interference in both cases. As we've been hearing on the show, Premier David Eby says inconsistent communication between police is sending the wrong message to extortion victims. Eby says in light of that, the province will be appointing a community advisory group to work with the extortion task force. More than 36 extortions have been reported in Surrey since the start of the year. And people in the hockey community are mourning the deaths of 3 young junior players who died in a crash yesterday. Kamloops' J.J. Wright and Cameron Casorso, both 18, along with 17-year-old Caden Fine from Alabama, were killed when their vehicle collided with a gravel truck near Stavely, Alberta. They were on their way to practice with the Southern Alberta Mustangs. And now the forecast. A rainfall warning is in effect for the north coast, and a wind warning continues for Haida Gwaii. In the Peace, cloudy this afternoon with a high of 4. In the central interior, including Prince George, showers with a high of 6. Highs up to 6 and mainly cloudy in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, cloudy with a high of 7. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria, and the Fraser Valley, cloudy this afternoon with highs around 12 degrees. That's your CBC News update from Vancouver.
Thank you very much, Rob. It's Rob Zimmerman in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Welcome back. You're with BC Today here on CBC. I'm Michelle Elliott. Thanks so much for being with us. And we are discussing the extortion crisis, particularly in Surrey. Premier David Eby was in Surrey this morning meeting with business leaders there, talking about the impact on businesses and as well appointing a community advisory group to work with police. So we're asking you, what is the impact of the extortion crisis on residents, on businesses in the community, and what needs to be implemented now to stop the violence? 46 cases of extortion in 2026 so far. You can call us now, 604-669-3733, 604-669-3733, or 1-800-825-5950. Our email, bctoday@cbc.ca. And we're live on TikTok as well. And yesterday, in fact, as we told you yesterday through our reporter, Saurabh Sandhu, there was a protest near Bear Creek Park among community members who were calling for action. Here's some of what they had to say.
Hearing every day, like what's going on in the community. So many victim families are my friends. Like listening their stories is scaring me. So I was asking them just to come out, speak up, but they are scared. They are under fear.
I want municipal government to look into it, provincial government to look into it, and federal government to look into it and make Surrey safe again for all of us.
This is not just a South Asian issue. This is an issue that's affecting all residents of our community. North, south, east, and west. Whatever segment you're in, this is affecting us. It's not just the people that are being extorted, which is absolutely terrifying, but it's the people who are scared to go out and walk their dog at night because the house down the street was shot up, or there's a police cruiser parked in front, and it's absolutely terrifying.
Those are some people who were demonstrating yesterday near Bear Creek Park in Surrey. My guest is Steve Kooner, who's the BC Conservative MLA for Richmond Queensborough and the opposition critic for the Attorney General. I'd ask you what goes through your mind when you hear that, Steve, but also we have an email here from Judith who asks us just to explain what kinds of demands and threats are being given to people, given that extortion isn't a well-known crime, and so some explanation would be welcome. If you could just tell us describe for us, let's get back to the basics. What exactly is happening?
Well, we've seen business community members receive WhatsApp calls of a threatening nature, threatening them, and demands for money, and telling them that shootings would happen if they didn't pay. And we've seen large sums of money being requested, as I've heard examples of little as $50,000. I've heard large as $500,000.
Oh.
And so
$50,000, no small amount either. I know you say as small as that, but that's for some people, for most people, that is a lot.
For when you compare the scale of how much it could be.
Yeah.
And so on the lower end of the scale, I've heard examples of $50,000. Mm-hmm. Higher end of the scale, I've heard $500,000, and I've heard in between as well. And I've heard not only business people that are very affluent being targeted, they're getting targeted, but also just business owners that are just starting up, and they're not making much money, but they're being told to give money in these extortion demands. And so we've also seen people get letters in the past, right? We've seen people get letters, and we've seen people get WhatsApp phone calls for demands of extortion money. Mm-hmm. And it's terrifying because these bullets are flying into people's homes, their businesses, and people have kids. They got elderly people living with them. They have families. And we've seen bystanders actually get hit by bullets. There's a young female that was hit in a basement. So this can have significant.
Absolutely. And let me just go to some callers. We have some callers from Surrey joining us right now, so I want to make sure they get on the line here. Emmanuel, thanks so much for calling us. What did you want to say?
Oh, thank you. I wonder if we could fight that this extortionist, with technology like cameras, maybe drone, even if it needs to be legislated, some people might advocate, that privacy with the cameras and all that on the street. But, those extortionists, they tend to be, I'm not expert, but from what I see, it's a little bit far away from the area because they don't want to get caught. So if we could, put all the cameras surrounding the streets, it might help, I would say.
Yeah. Emmanuel, thank you very much. And you're in Surrey. What's been the impact, do you think? What's it like for you there?
Yeah, I live close to, a commercial area. Mm-hmm. So it might impact me, I have children, and if I'm walking around, if somebody's going to be shooting and by mistake I could be, one of the victims.
Has it hampered, has it made you think twice about going to the commercial areas near your home?
Of course.
Emmanuel, thank you very much for the call. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We've heard that suggestion of cameras. Councillor Linda Annis is also running for mayor, spoke about that yesterday on the coast with Gloria Makarenko. What do you think of that suggestion?
Well, there's a lot of suggestions from the community. And the most important thing is that the provincial government should be listening to the community in terms of what their concerns are. And then when solutions are adopted, they need to go to the root of the problem, and they need to address the root of the problem. And so there's been many items that have been asked for. So this provincial government should be looking into all the suggestions that are coming from the community, and seeing what the provincial government needs to do, which is necessary.
Okay, so you're willing to explore it or have the province look at it, but no stance on that right now then?
Well, the provincial government is privy to information from intelligence and from the law enforcement. That's not something that I'm privy to. Mm-hmm. So I can't speak to all that information that the provincial government is getting. But what I do say is that the provincial government should be actively listening to the community and what the asks are, and should be actually looking at how do we actually solve this crisis rather than trying to chase this crisis. How do we solve it? How do we end it?
Bodhi is next now, also from Surrey. Hi, Bodhi. Thanks very much for calling in. And how would you describe the impact of this? Hi, Bodhi, are you there?
Oh, Bobby?
Bobby, my apologies, Bobby. Go ahead.
No. Yeah, I go by Bobby. My name is Bhupinder.
Okay. Hi, Bhupinder. Thank you for calling in. What do you see as the impact of this extortion crisis?
Hello to both Michelle and Steve. Yeah, the impact is the community is kind of in a shock. And my point is how it could be solved is that if the federal government especially, and maybe provincial also, they have to plug the loopholes. There is too many loopholes, like the criminals, they do the crime, and then, they seek a refugee status. So, I mean, the laws, the laws are kind of strange. And these politicians, doesn't matter provincial or federal, they don't work enough, like only 85 days at this Victoria, and only not more than 127 days,
Oh, okay. So there's, you're saying lack of action is what you're saying, but also loopholes in immigration.
It doesn't matter who is in the government and who is on the opposition. They know they can fix the problem if they want to. They don't have the strong will.
Bodhi, thank you very much for the call. That last point, Steve, it's something that I've heard from Jenny Sims as well, former NDP MLA, who is now a radio host in Surrey, that there's a lack of political will on this. And I know you've talked about that lack of action from the province, but overall, is there a lack of political will?
We have to keep in mind that the provincial government is in charge of all the resources, right? And what we are hearing from the community is that they are hearing of a concern of inaction. We're hearing a concern of inaction. And the concern is directed towards the provincial government, where not enough is being done in terms of allocation of resources. And the communities are seeing that there's not enough being done. And the provincial government can actually do a lot more. But I'm seeing it, that they can do a lot more, but it's not being done.
We'll continue to follow this, and we'll hear more about this community advisory group tomorrow, when the chair will be announced or appointed. And thank you very much for joining us on this ongoing issue, Steve. Good to have you.
Thank you for having me, Michelle.
That's Steve Kooner, the BC Conservative MLA for Richmond-Queensborough, the opposition critic for the Attorney General. It's 12:44. You're with BC Today. Now, yesterday on the show, we talked about a final report from the Provincial Forest Advisory Council, and it's calling for essentially a whole rethink of the industry, including more data transparency on the status of forests and shifting from managing harvest volumes to managing lands. We got some emails. Joanne writes, Canada was built on strip and ship. Like your guests and callers are identifying the importance of the trees to the health of the land and human safety. In the 70s, people were talking about value added to the industry, hence the creation of pulp and paper, now also dying. Don't know what will change to natural resource extraction. Oh, perhaps the end of the planet? Doug writes from Victoria, I've been following forest habitat destruction for 40 plus years. The common denominator is too much wealth and power in the hands of biggest proponents and profiteers from clear cutting. Clear cutting has never been a sustainable practice, and many other methods of forestry have been demonstrated as effective for decades. Going forward, decisions should be watershed and community-based, which definitely includes First Nations overview and recommendations. Jeffrey writes, Premier Harcourt's Forest Practices Code was a much-needed reassessment of forestry in BC. However, the subsequent BC Liberal government neglected inventory, which constantly changes because it's living and dying. So that needs to be redone now from scratch. That's a huge test, considering the ecological changes that have occurred in the past few decades. The big problems are lack of accurate inventory and identification of old-growth stands suitable for preservation. These stands need to be identified before they can be preserved. Old growth susceptible to rapid ecological and maladaptive should be harvested and converted to species more suitable to forecast climate, and this needs to be commenced now. Thank you very much for your emails. bctoday@cbc.ca. .46 now. You're with BC Today here on CBC. Thanks so much for joining us. We're live on Radio 1, CBC Television, and live streaming as well on YouTube and on TikTok. I'm Michelle Elliott. Very nice to be with you this afternoon. Well, February is Black History Month, honoring the contributions of the Black community in Canada and the United States. The BC Black History Awareness Society is celebrating with a series of events, and Sylvia Mange-Alene is the president of the BC Black History Awareness Society, and she joins me from Victoria. Good afternoon. Thanks very much for being with us.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here, Michelle. Thank you.
Can you tell me what Black History Month means to you?
To me personally, well, I cannot tell. I don't have time now to tell you what this means to me personally. But what I would say is that for the history of Canada, and for all Canadians, it means that we are recognizing that Black people have been part of this blueprint that we call our country of Canada, have been part of Canada for many, many, many years. Since the 1800s, since end of the 1800s, and so we celebrate them. We want to acknowledge them, and we want to make them feel that they belong to this country, like we all do.
Have you seen awareness grow over the years that you've been involved?
Yes, I have seen it, but you see, but it takes work. Awareness doesn't come by itself. You have to really walk the street, knock on doors, go to school, go to federal departments, talk to the government, educate people, and find many ways to do it. So it's what we have been doing more than 30 years we have been here, and so we are very happy to see how more people come to our events. Not only Black people, but people of all backgrounds come to our events. They're interested in knowing the history of Black people in BC, because it's completely different to the Black people back east, right? So, and yeah, it is nice. It's nice to see the interest of people. So,
what are those conversations like, Sylvia?
Well, the conversations, you mean the conversation we have with the people or with the institutions? Because, there are two types of conversations. Right. The conversation with people, the conversation with our communities is that Black history, as well as other many history, because Canada, as you know, is has so many different people coming from different part of the world, so the conversation is that you belong, we all belong here. Once you become Canadian, doesn't matter where your background, you belong here. And that is a privilege, right? That is a privilege. And then, so what do you do with that privilege? How do you become a citizen that not only is proud of their being from the background they come from, but also is proud of being Canadian, right? And that's a conversation that we have with people, right? And with the institution, we just want people to recognize the history, not only of the Blacks, but also the Polish, the Chinese, the Southeast Asian people that came here and make this country what it is today.
And when it comes to, as you say, you've been working on this for decades now. What's missing still? And you talk about, that awareness and people wanting to learn. But what do you think is still missing from perhaps the education system or from what institutions do know?
Yeah. You mentioned it, the education system. I think our children, they need to learn in schools how Canada was created. And Canada was created, and Canada was built by all the people that came from different places, from Europe, from Asia, from Africa, right? From South America, from the Caribbean. It was built by all those people that have come here, that Canada is not only one color, that Canada is many, many colors, that Canada is a diverse country, it's a very rich country. And in when it comes to the people that inhabit this country. So, and I think because if we don't know our history, we cannot make sense of the present, you see? So to make sense of the present, we need to know our history.
And to that end, in addition to your work with the BC Black History Awareness Society, you also started the Kulea Culture Society, and this is about cultural awareness training and presentations. That's fascinating. Tell us about your work there.
Oh, okay. So Kulea Culture Society is our purpose is to educate people about equity, diversity, and inclusion, which I think that many people don't understand what equity, diversity, and inclusion means. And we do that through education, through events. And so we have different events coming up. And it's all to build community. It's all to make people belong. It's all to make people feel that they belong, no matter in which community they live in within our country, Canada. And it's also to realize that we need this richness in our country because it makes us strongest. It makes communities stronger, definitely. Nothing is perfect, but good people come from everywhere. And so now that we find ourselves here in our communities, how can we better our communities? How can we be better people? How can we be of use for our community? So Kulea Culture Society purpose is to make people feel that they belong, to make people feel that they can do better and they can do a lot. And so that's what we do with Kulea Culture Society.
Wow.
In fact, we have an event coming now in March for International Women's Day. And again, it's about these women that are serving the community, what inspired them to serve the community.
It's interesting you say good people come from everywhere. And you came to Canada in 2006?
No, 2001, sorry.
My apologies. I have 2006
No, it's
here.
Okay. It's fine. It's fine.
Tell us about that. Where did you come from and what was that experience like arriving here?
Interesting. Thank you. Well, I was born in West Central Africa in a small country called Equatorial Guinea. That is the only country that speaks Spanish. It's the only sub-Saharan country that was colonized by the Spanish people. But my parents immigrated to Spain when I was very young, when I was a kid. So I grew up in Spain, in Madrid. And so, yes, I'm Spanish, I would say. That is the first culture that I learned. And then then, you know, when you are young, so you want to travel, you want to know the world. So I went to England to learn English, and I met my partner, who happens to be Canadian, and so that is how I ended up here. So I would say that love brought me to Canada, and no, honestly, I know on that note, love is the number one reason why people immigrate. And I wish people would say more of that, you know, but it's the truth. Yeah, love is the number one reason why people immigrate.
Yes, love of what? Love of what?
Oh, love of well, I fell in love with a Canadian man, and so we ended up I ended up coming here with him, and when I arrived here, I did not know about Black history in Canada. So it was very enlightening for me to find out about the richness of the Black history here in Victoria and in Salt Spring Island. You know, and where I came from, Europe, we don't celebrate Black History Month. They do celebrate in the UK, but not in the rest of Europe. And so coming here and learning about this history, it made me think about my positionality in the world and about my purpose here in the world, and about, you know, what is that I can do as a woman and as a Black woman to better my community and to better myself.
And it's growing, isn't it, the Black community?
The Black community in Victoria is growing. I wouldn't know the exact numbers, but it is growing. Yes, definitely. I can see the difference between 2005 that we moved here from Toronto to now. Definitely, yes.
So much so that there, I believe, I understand, there's going to be a new community center.
Yes, and this is we are so proud of the community center. But as you see, the community center is not going to be only for Black. Right, and it's always what I'm trying to educate people about. You know, the community center, even though it's open in collaboration, it's by the Black History Awareness Society in collaboration with another organization, because it's two organizations together opening this center. This center is for everybody. This center is for every youth that wants to come, learn, and wants to sit down, have coffee, and do some work. This center belongs to the community.
What a great note to end on. Happy Black History Month. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Michelle, for having me.
That is Sylvia Mangay Alene, the president of the BC Black History Awareness Society, and she did join us from Victoria. It is now just about 12:58 rather. You're with BC Today. Thanks very much for joining us. And you can always send us your thoughts, bctoday@cbc.ca, on anything you hear on the show. Much more throughout the day here on CBC, of course, on the tragedy that has struck the hockey community, not just in Kamloops, but across the country. And more on that throughout the day here on CBC, and on the ongoing extortion crisis.